Let's talk about confidence. Episode 9, when confidence crashes, recovery and rebuilding. Welcome to the final episode in this season of Let's Talk About Confidence. I'm John M. Walsh. Over the past episodes, we've built a comprehensive understanding of confidence, how it's built through accumulated evidence, how to push through the boring middle bit, and how to execute under pressure, and also how to build confidence across all the different life domains. But there's one thing we need to talk about. What happens when confidence crashes? When you've built confidence through months or years of systematic practice, and then something happens that undermines it, maybe a major failure or public humiliation, devastating feedback, betrayal, suddenly the confidence you worked so hard to build feels fragile or gone entirely. This episode is about what causes confidence to crash, how to protect the confidence you've built, and most importantly, how to recover. Here's what I've learned over the years. Confidence crashes are not that rare. They're quite common. Almost everybody who builds significant confidence eventually experiences a crash. The difference between people who recover and people who don't isn't that they're stronger. It's that they understand what's happening and how to rebuild it. Let me start by sharing some stories of confidence crashes. The first one I've called a high-stakes failure. It's Rachel, she's senior manager. She's been 8 years in the role, strong leadership confidence built through hundreds of difficult conversations and thousands of decisions. Then she led a major project, 6 months of work, very, very high visibility, and she made a strategic decision that seemed sound at the time, but it failed spectacularly and in public. Rachel's leadership confidence crashed in 2 weeks. She'd questioned every decision, second-guessed herself constantly. 8 years of accumulated evidence felt meaningless in the face of one major failure. The second story is one called the public humiliation, and this is about David, who was a consultant. He'd built strong presentation confidence over 5 years. Then he was presented to a particularly aggressive CEO. Mid-presentation, the CEO interrupted. "This is a waste of my time. You clearly don't understand our business. We're done here." In front of 20 people. It was brutal. David's presentation confidence crashed. For 3 months, he couldn't present without overwhelming anxiety. This one's called the devastating feedback. Lisa was a writer. She built a creative confidence over 3 years, finally felt confident calling herself a writer. Then she shared her work with a mentor she deeply respected, and the feedback was harsh. "This isn't good, you need to start over." Lisa's creative confidence crashed. She stopped writing entirely. 3 years of confidence building undermined by one conversation. And the final story is called the accumulated erosion. Because not all confidence crashes are sudden. James was a salesperson. He'd built strong sales confidence over 10 years. Then his company changed his compensation, reassigned his territories, and brought in leadership who constantly questioned his approach. Over 6 months, his confidence gradually eroded. There was no single dramatic event, just constant, low-level undermining. Eventually, James was functioning like someone in their first year, not their 10th. There's 5 causes of confidence crashes. Cause number 1 is a high-stakes failure. High-stakes attempt fails spectacularly. Evidence that you built your confidence, it suddenly feels very unreliable. Cause 2, the public humiliation. Someone whose opinion matters delivers brutal feedback publicly. Your brain categorises the entire domain as dangerous. Cause 3, the betrayal or violation of your trust. Someone you trusted undermined you. The relationship context made your confidence feel safe. The betrayal removes that safety. Cause 4 is accumulated erosion. Not a single event, but sustained pressure gradually wears down your confidence. And cause 5 is life circumstances. It could be illness, loss, trauma, burnout. They just deplete your resources. And confidence requires psychological and physical resources. When it's depleted, confidence becomes fragile. The common thread in all of these is that all confidence crashes involve a reinterpretation of your evidence. You had evidence. I can do this. I've got hundreds of examples. but something happens that make you question it. But I failed this time. Maybe all that evidence was luck. Confidence crashes when accumulated evidence suddenly feels unreliable. Understanding this is critical for recovery, because the evidence didn't actually disappear. It got reinterpreted, and reinterpretation can be corrected. Let's look at the anatomy of a crash. Phase 1 is a triggering event. Something happens. Your threat response activates intensely. Your brain categorises the situation as dangerous, socially dangerous, or identity threatening. Phase 2, the evidence reinterpretation. This is where the crash actually happens. Your brain in threat mode reinterprets your accumulated evidence. Those successes were luck. I was fooling myself. The failure reveals the truth. I'm not actually capable. The evidence doesn't change. Your interpretation does. This reinterpretation is what crashes confidence. Phase 3, the generalisation. The crash doesn't stay contained. It generalises. Rachel's project failure wasn't just about that project. Her brain generalised it. I can't make good strategic decisions. I'm not a competent leader. The generalisation makes the crash far more destructive than the triggering event warrants. Phase 4, the behavioural change. Once confidence is crashed, behaviour changes. Avoidance, you avoid situations requiring that confidence. Over-preparation, you prepare excessively, trying to eliminate all risk. And you get performance anxiety. Situations that used to feel manageable now trigger intense anxiety. And self-monitoring, you're watching yourself constantly, looking for evidence that you're failing. Phase 5 is the feedback loop. These behaviours feel protective, they're actually maintaining the crash. Avoidance prevents new evidence. Over-preparation creates exhaustion. Performance anxiety degrades execution. And self-monitoring takes away the attention from external focus. These behaviours create a feedback loop that maintains low confidence. So we need protection strategies. And before we talk about recovery, let's just talk about that protection. How to make confidence less vulnerable to crashes. Let's start with strategy 1, the distributed evidence. Don't put all your confidence evidence in one context. Lead projects in multiple domains. Handle difficult conversations with different types of people. When one context fails, you still have evidence from others. So distribute the evidence across your domains. Strategy 2 is regular evidence review. Don't just accumulate evidence, review it systematically. Quarterly look at your evidence log. This keeps evidence psychologically accessible. It makes it harder for one failure to reinterpret years of success. Your log could be your diary when you're looking at what activities you've done. It could be reviewing the presentations you've done, the project milestones you've met. Whatever it is, review that evidence. Strategy 3 is expected failure rate. Now understand that failure is statistically guaranteed. High performers fail more often than low performers because they attempt more difficult things. Build this into your expectations. I know I'll fail approximately 20% high stakes attempts. That's the expected failure rate for challenging work. It might be higher. When failure happens, it's not shocking. It's statistical and you were expecting it. You were prepared for it. Strategy 4 is relationship boundaries. Be careful whose opinions have power to crash your confidence. Decide consciously whose feedback matters. This doesn't mean ignoring all criticism. It means being strategic about whose opinions can destabilise you. Strategy 5 is domain separation. Keep domains separate. A crash in one domain doesn't need to affect other domains. Rachel's project failure was in strategic planning. It doesn't actually relate to her capability in difficult conversations or delegation. A better approach, I made a strategic planning error. My other leadership capabilities remain intact. Strategy 6 is resource management. Confidence requires psychological and physical resources. Protect them. Make sure you get adequate sleep. Make sure you build in some recovery time. Build up your emotional reserves. Think of confidence like your immune system. When resources are good, can handle challenges. When it's depleted, it's vulnerable. Strategy 7, meta-evidence. Build evidence about your ability to build confidence, not just evidence of specific capabilities. I've built confidence in sales and leadership and public speaking. I know how to build confidence. This is meta-evidence and it's way more stable. Even if confidence crashes in one domain, the meta-evidence remains. I've rebuilt confidence before, I can do it again. Let me tell you about my own crashes. Years ago, I ran a workshop for a car manufacturer in Birmingham. It was 8 hours. I could see from the start the participants didn't want to be there. We call them reluctant learners. Arms crossed, legs extended, all looking away. You could tell they just didn't want to be there. But I pushed through, I did everything I knew how to do, but nothing was getting them involved and nothing was landing. When it finished, I felt like I'd failed, like I wasn't good enough. Drive home was 2 hours. I didn't put the radio on, just had my own thoughts and replaying every moment, every crossed arm, every disengaged face. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I felt worthless. And I knew I couldn't walk into my house feeling like that. So I sat in the car and had a wee chat with myself. I made myself remember the 9 years of successful workshops before that day. The great participant feedback I'd had, the scores, they're all positive. The professional training that I'd completed to allow me to do my job. I trained hard for this, I was still learning. I had evidence, real evidence, that I was good at this work. Then I made myself look around. I was sitting outside a beautiful home. I had a successful career, a wife who loved me, a family who loved me. And all of that was still true. One difficult workshop didn't erase any of it. That reframe snapped me out of it. Walked into my house, hugged my wife and moved on. But it was a hard lesson. And here's what that experience taught me about recovery. The 5 phases of recovery. Phase 1 is contain the damage. In the first 48 hours, when a crash happens, first priority is prevent generalisation. The crash wants to spread to this workshop failed becomes I'm not good at workshops because I'm not good at anything. Your job in the first 48 hours, contain it to the specific context. What I had to tell myself in the car, this was one workshop with participants who didn't want to be there. That doesn't mean I can't run workshops. Write it down if you need to. Your brain will want to generalise it. So writing it down, reviewing it actively prevents that. Phase 2 is accessing your existing evidence. You do that through week 1 where your accumulated evidence still exists. You temporarily lost access to it because you were feeling under threat. Restore that access. That's what I did in my car. Forced myself to remember 9 years of successful workshops. Excellent feedback, professional qualifications. If you keep an evidence log, open it. Read it systematically and count the attempts. Look at the progression. I kept a log of all the people that I've worked with and that we'd awarded certificates to for completing the workshops with us. I'd go back to that log and look at what I'd done that year so far. And up the top was a number that we'd done since we'd started moving into the workshops and consultancy. So you're not building it from zero. You're restoring access to what already exists. Phase 3 is correct interpretation. This is again in weeks 1, week 2. The crash happened because of evidence reinterpretation. Correct it. My crashed interpretation was the workshop failed, therefore I'm not good at the work. The correct interpretation is I've got hundreds of successful workshops and one difficult one. That's a normal distribution of outcomes when you do challenging work. And this isn't just positive thinking, it's accurate thinking. You're correcting a cognitive distortion caused by negativity bias. Phase 4, low stakes re-engagement. Don't jump back into a high stakes situation immediately. Re-engage gradually. After that Birmingham workshop, I didn't immediately take on another difficult corporate client. I ran a session with a group I knew well and built one new piece of evidence, then another, then another. Progressive re-engagement, each successful attempt, strengthens confidence slightly. And phase 5 is update your mental models. This is always ongoing. Use the crash as learning without letting it destabilise you. What I learned from Birmingham Some groups just don't want to be there. That's not always fixable. Read the room earlier. Don't take reluctant participants personally. That's useful learning, different from I'm bad at workshops. Extract the learning and don't internalise failure as identity. Many years later, as much as 6 years later, 7 years later, I was running a workshop for an engineering company in Geneva. It was pre-Christmas, and it was just coming up to the bit where we would naturally break for Christmas. And again, I got the feeling that the people just didn't want to be there. There was a class of about 12 or 15. And again, it was this reluctant learner syndrome. But I went back to the Birmingham one, not in a bad way. I went back to it in a good way and went, I know this isn't about me. This is about them. I tried to build relationships with them. I delivered the material. They played a part. They went along with it. But I knew when I'd finished it, it wasn't as good as it could have been. But I knew that it wasn't me. I'd stuck to the workshop process that I had, the techniques I'd used and got great feedback on. And I found out months later that these guys didn't want to be there before Christmas. They knew the travel, because they were from all over Europe, they knew the travel would be difficult and they begged not to do the workshop before Christmas. So they took that out on me, not the company that put them there. It was funny, I found out about it through a colleague who was doing the next module with them. And the group felt so bad, they sent me a case of wine to apologise. So don't take one instance of a crash as everything about you. Sometimes you got to do a bit of digging to get your evidence to show that you are still confident in that area because you've got the evidence, and that helps. Confidence crashes, they do feel permanent when they're happening, but they're not. Systematic recovery is maybe week 1 after that acute crash, you've got an intense anxiety. And this is the worst phase where you're feeling it. And then the following weeks, you re-engage, still anxiety, but it's manageable. And then as you move on from that, your confidence starts returning noticeably. And after a couple of months, maybe even quicker, your confidence is largely restored. It's much faster than building confidence initially because you're not building from zero. You're recovering access to existing evidence. Most confidence crashes can be recovered using these strategies, but some require professional support. If the crash was triggered by a trauma, or if you experience symptoms beyond confidence loss, depression, inability to function, intrusive thoughts, if you tried recovery strategies for 3 months, 2 months, whatever, without any improvement, there's absolutely no shame in seeking professional support. Some confidence crashes are beyond self-recovery strategies. Over the episodes, we built a complete understanding of confidence. Episode 1 was why most confidence advice fails. And it was looking at the confidence cycle, evidence-based confidence, and building on that. Episode 2, we majored on the bone middle bit, where most people quit, yet that's exactly where your brain is restructuring and building the neural pathways. You need to be confident, but we can't see any of that yet. Episode 3, when confidence starts building, that was us putting ourselves under some progressive challenges to build our confidence. Episode 4, we started with confidence under pressure. We were looking at that pressure tolerance training. And episode 5 was team confidence. How do we get that collective execution under pressure? Episode 6, sales confidence, and it was looking at why sales skills alone don't work. We've got to be prepared for the rejection that sales roles naturally brings. Episode 7 is leadership confidence. In particular, it's that subject matter or technical expert that one day is doing the job on a Friday, but on the Monday they're now a leader. And it's how do they transition that and build their confidence. In episode 8, we looked at confidence across domains, life domains, and we considered what things transfer and what doesn't. And when confidence crashes has been this final episode. And it's all about protecting ourselves and recovering. Throughout the series, one message has remained consistent. Confidence isn't a feeling you conjure up through positive thinking. It's not a personality trait that you're born with. Confidence is accumulated evidence of your capability in specific domains, built through systematic practice, tested under pressure, maintained through continued engagement. Not quickly, not easily, but it is reliable. If you've listened to the entire series, you now understand confidence better than 95% of people. The question now, will you use the knowledge? Because understanding doesn't build confidence. Practice builds confidence. Pick one domain. Start the confidence cycle. 10 attempts this month. Track them. Build the evidence. In a year, you'll have foundation confidence. A few years from now, application level confidence. A bit further on, mastery. Or you can do nothing, and in 10 years from now, you'll still be wishing you had confidence. The choice is yours. Thanks for listening to the series. I hope it's given you not just understanding, but practical tools to build your confidence that lasts. And most important, don't just listen, use it. Start today. One attempt, one piece of evidence, one step forward. I'm John M. Walsh. This has been Let's Talk About Confidence. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in Season 2.